when you're in a time, right? So you got these Karens where you're talking about Emmett Till, he whistled at me, or when you're talking about Roswell type actions, it was a Negro, or they blame a black guy. These women are taking advantage of a system of a loophole in the system that shouldn't be there, right? Because now they're playing on the empathy of those who are coming to help them. Okay, well, I'm a white woman, I'm fragile, I'm you have to protect me. And what would make it easier for you to look past my lie, or what's really going on, or what could I do to incense you? I'll tell you that, oh, this black person is harming me, which makes all sense go out the window, and you start just hearing what I'm saying. So I think that this isn't a new thing. I think that, thank God, we're starting to see that it's, we see it more, we're more sensitive to it. But that's a whole class of people who've been doing this. We've taught them in our society through our laws, through the way our law enforcement handle things, through the way our municipalities handle things. There's been a long-standing rule. I grew up knowing, if you want to get something done, complain like a white woman. If you want to, I kid you, if you want to get something done, whether you're talking about the pothole in the street, whether you're talking about getting somebody on AT&T to answer your call and you can get some help, if you want to get something done, complain like a white woman. Complain like you are extremely entitled, like you should be doing this, you're irate, and what's going on. And that's the thing. Our society has perpetuated that. So now we're telling them, you can't do that anymore. You're like the rest of us. And they're like, wait, we've never moved by those rules. Who changed? When did the goalpost change? And to a degree, the same with the Kens. The Kens are like, hey, I've been, excuse my French, I've been slapping asses and smoking cigars in the office for years. Now all of a sudden I have to stop. So as we change what is acceptable, there are going to be these people who are going to fight it tooth and nail, who are going to try to maintain the status quo, and who are going to try to perpetuate it. And so I see the Karen thing as, you get dealt a hand of cards. I can't get mad if you play the ace.
And you know what, Vincent, I will agree with everything that you said, but question about being taught. I think a lot of it is built into the way things go. I guess it's not inherently consciously taught. A lot of it is unconscious. Take a child, a white child who has not been taught to know what racism is or to hate anybody. This child grows up and starts to realize that there's a difference going on, and that maybe as they grow older, get into the teenage, they start to realize, I have certain rights because I'm white. Or let me try this, or let me try to squeal on somebody here and see what happens. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's always something that's taught, as well as the fabric of this country that needs to be changed. For example, what you talked about, the Central Park bird watching, or Robert, whoever mentioned it, this confrontation started, what happened on May 25th, 2020. It was the same day, the exact same day that George Floyd was killed, was murdered. And what happened was, this white woman, Amy Cooper, in Central Park, was walking her dog without a leash. A black man who was there, Christian Cooper, same last name, no relation, was there bird watching. And he asked her to put a dog on a leash, which the rules of the park is, if there's a dog, you're walking your dog has to be leashed. And she refused, of course, and said she was going to call 911 and tell them that this black man was harassing her. He was videotaping the whole time and said, go ahead, do it. And she went on and on and on about, I'm going to tell him that you're harassing me, you're a black man, and blah, blah, blah. And the whole thing was being taped. There's been many, many occasions when it's not taped. And we know what the end result is. The white person, 9 times out of 10, will be believed.
Absolutely.
And if it hadn't been videotaped, let's say, and the police had shown up and taken her side. This is another black man that could have been killed or beat up or incarcerated or whatever for no apparent reason. So,
May I ask a question really quick?
make it quick. Yes.
I'll make it quick, I promise. I've noticed the Karen-isms, right? The Karen-isms where they play the card where it works out for them. I've also noticed, and I was wondering if anyone else on the panelists have noticed, and I don't want to sidetrack us too much, as the reverse of that, right? When you're dealing with people of color or minorities, and everything's about race, even when they're wrong. You know what I'm saying? You come in late or you didn't do what was necessary, right? And then you go, oh, they just doing that because I'm black. Oh, I bet you if I was white, it wouldn't happen like that. I've seen, excuse me, the converse of that. And both are extremes, right? They're extremes on the spectrum. And I just thought it was interesting. Has anyone else seen or witnessed a phenomenon like this where it's like, okay, the same way a Karen might say, oh my God, I'm going to bring out the police and they'll handle this, and they're more willing to believe my side because of my color and disposition, you know, is the same. I've seen some people use their ethnicity and say, oh, this is racist. Oh, they're being unfair to me. Has anyone else found themselves seeing situations similar to this?
Well, I will say this. I definitely have seen it. And in fact, I have conversations with my wife about that all the time. I'm going to ask the panelists, if you're not speaking, please put yourself on mute. Because everything doesn't have to boil down to race. We get complacent with complaining. Karens get complacent with complaining. I feel that it's also something that we as Black people, we get complacent with race. I wouldn't say complacent, but the first thing we want to pull is the race card.
But that also goes to what we were saying about society has taught us that. Society has taught the Karens that they have that card. You have the card because we perceive you as pure or innocent, or, you know what I'm saying, needs to be protected. You know what I'm saying? And on the converse of that, this new movement is everyone knows for some reason that if you're a minority, things are a lot different. And you're taught coming up that, you know what, if you don't know what something is, if things seem like they should line up and they don't, it's probably because you're Black. But what happens when that's not the reality? What happens when that's just what we're taught as we move forward, but we start using it like Karens, and Karens start using that card too. So both are playing cards. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to put it on that card rather than to admit, you know, you're an asshole and maybe you had it coming. You know, Charlie, you've been very quiet.
Not often.
What are you thinking about over there?
I'm thinking many things about this. You know, I was researching this beforehand. I was thinking about the Central Park thing, which I don't know if that was the original thing, but that was kind of the big thing at the time, you know, and of course, the same weekend of the Floyd thing as well. And so I think about that. And I said, no, God. And of course, obviously being a white person here, you know, there's a certain, when I see people do that, the first word, there's a certain arrogance and ignorance on the part of that woman in that case, both of them. And I don't know that woman's background or whatever. I was reading more about the case. You know, she was terminated from her job. She has filed a wrongful termination suit against them. I think it was a few months ago. And the company, it was an investment firm, I may add, has tried to get that canceled, and it's still in the courts. So we'll see where that goes. And she did some training or sensitivity training or whatever it was on it, as opposed to doing any jail time. And she did complete that. And so they dropped the charge up. So whenever I see somebody do that, be male or female, it always feels to me like, and I'm saying this as a white person, it seems like coming out of nowhere. I have no idea why they're talking this way, you know? And I'll tell you what, a lot of those people have not even been around a person of color at all, or very limited, you know, because they live in a community that's, you know, overwhelmingly majority white, you know. I grew up in a community like that, okay? And so the persons of color I met as a child, well, first, when I was a child, we used to take our laundry to a neighboring town, and a person of color did it for us. And this is up here in Illinois, I'll add. And this is a long time, because I'm old, but back in the 60s. So that's the first thing I remember. There was a gentleman who was a cook that we knew somehow through the family. But the first person of my age of color I met when I was in junior high school was a person in it would be a disabled student class, was EMH back then. And I met that a person of color during that time who was disabled, had him in PE class. So that was the first time I ever met somebody my age that was seventh grade or thereabouts. And so, my own existence was pretty limited on that, And later on, obviously, I met people and I knew people and we're friends with people of color. But, and my screen is getting messed up here, but we'll keep going.
What is this?
And sorry about that. So, I will tell you as a personal thing here, it's probably the best way I can put it. The best personal experience I ever had was I worked professionally in a job in the city of Detroit. I lived in Detroit, in the city. I lived there. I was in a college and all that. And for a period of time, I didn't even have a car up there. So I went to, the grocery store to get something to do food or whatever there at the time. And I was the only white person there. I was the minority. In other words, the tables had turned. And, I met a lot of people up there and learned about their experiences and all that. And it was really very enlightening for me to do that. So, if people had, I kind of wish that people all had that opportunity to do something like that, so they could understand a little more on that. I don't like the stuff that just seems just totally random that comes out of nowhere on this. The Karen thing has a lot of funny sides to it as well. I was reading stuff on it. There's a restaurant in Australia called Karen, and you can go and yell and scream all you want there. So, and then you can buy your food. So if you want to go yell and scream, go to the restaurant in Australia, and you can do it there. Karens are just the angry people of the world. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
But something else happened in June of 2020. There was a protest going on. The protesters, Black Lives Matter, were on their way to the mayor's office to demand that the mayor in St. Louis resign. Something had happened down there. And
yes,
as they were passing by the home of these two attorneys, right. And I have the picture up on the screen that you guys, the panelists, can see right now.
Right.
They pulled out their pistols and AR weapons, pointed them at the protesters who were just passing by. And that's when the meme started with Karen and Ken. The name Ken came into play as being the male Karen. So my question to you guys is simply about names. Names can hurt. Names can kill. Names can identify, sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly. But as a Black man in this country who's been called many names over the centuries, isn't it time to get rid of names?
It is time to get rid of names. Names are hurtful and harmful, and they stick sometimes when people don't defend themselves about those names. And I was thinking, listening to everyone, I was thinking about an experience I had when I first started working a job in Virginia. I was working with a group of people who had a level of expectation of who I was as a person coming from New York. And I was so different that they did not, everything that was a negative, they attributed it to me. And they believed that I was angry and aggressive when I just spoke to people firmly and respectfully. And I noticed that was something they weren't accustomed to. My name does not indicate my race at all. So I've had a lot of clients when they came in would do the, oh, and I never paid any attention. And then one day it's like, what was that about? Like, why? it's like, oh, and I always found myself defending myself. Like, I shouldn't know this. I shouldn't